Oh yeah, Switch 2 rumors are back, baby! Feels like it's been a long time since we've had these, but this past week we've gotten quite a few, including that the Switch 2 will have magnetic Joy-Cons, along with a bunch of other technical specs I don't really understand, but I'm not really going to talk about those today. We already have news updates about them, so check them out in case you want to be refreshed on the Switch 2 rumors. But this has got me thinking a lot more about Nintendo's next console, especially seeing as we might be close to a reveal sometime relatively soon. Who's to say? But I've also been thinking about what games we're going to play on this thing day one. Whether it comes out later this year or early next year, I don't even know what the consensus is on that anymore. We can all agree that the Switch 2 needs a killer app on day one. I mean, think about it. The Nintendo Switch launched with Breath of the Wild, one of the most impactful games of all time. Heck, going back even further, the Nintendo 64 launched with Super Mario 64, a complete revolution for gaming in general. Nintendo definitely has a history with great launch titles, at least for some of their consoles. Others have had lackluster ones, but still wound up being pretty successful in their own way. Think of the 3DS launch. What a miserable launch lineup. Let's not do that again for the Switch 2. So I have a few ideas of what the Switch 2 launch game could be. There's of course going to be multiple games at launch, but there's really only going to be one, maybe two must-have games on that launch day. First, let's begin with Metroid Prime 4. For years, people have been speculating that this will be a cross-gen release between the Switch 1 and the Switch 2, and you know, it could be a potentially good launch title for Switch 2. Look at how great Metroid Prime Remastered looks. Imagine that, but looking even better on the Switch 2, which might be the case if Prime 4 is a cross-released game. You got those 4K visuals, maybe even some ray tracing, all at 60 frames per second. Of course, the game itself is going to be great because Retro Studios is making it, so really it sounds like a perfect launch game, does it not? Well, let's consider the numbers. Metroid has not historically been a very successful franchise for Nintendo. Recently, we've got the best-selling Metroid game in the form of Metroid Dread, but even then, that just cracked 3 million units, which is not a lot compared to other Nintendo franchises. Now, you could argue that Metroid Prime 4 being a launch title for the highly anticipated Switch 2 could actually help Metroid Prime 4, what with people buying the Switch 2, seeing this cool-looking space shooter, thinking, wow, I'm gonna pick this game up, it looks really cool to try on my new system. But in all honesty, I don't think Nintendo wants to take that risk, especially on launch day, so I actually made an entire video a few months ago explaining why Metroid Prime 4 should actually come out on Switch 1 first, and then Switch 2 later. Is it because I want to play it sooner? Maybe, but I think I still make a good argument. One of these reasons being that the game would get overshadowed by one of Nintendo's more popular franchises, like Mario. Could you imagine a Nintendo Switch 2 launching with a brand new 3D Mario game? Super Mario Odyssey came out 7 years ago at this point. Okay, more like 6.5, but still, it feels like a very long time, and it's a shocker that we actually never got a Mario Odyssey 2 on the Switch 1. Am I suggesting that this new 3D Mario could be Odyssey 2? Sure, it could, or even something like Bowser's Fury, but bigger and with more content would also be a very tantalizing offer. And you know, the point of a launch title is to show off what your system can do, and what better way to show that than with a 3D Mario game. We're already hot off the heels of the Mario movie. People have Mario fever up the wazoo, or should I say wahoo, and they are dying to play more Mario games, beyond just Super Mario Bros. Wonder. And let's face it, 3D Mario is just platforming perfection. These games control great, they look fantastic, and their level design is incredibly creative. So imagine playing something like Super Mario Odyssey 2, with graphics up to 4K, 60 FPS, and maybe if the Switch 2 has new features like, I don't know, haptic feedback on their controllers, it could greatly demonstrate those features as well. Something like an Astro's Playroom situation on PS5. I just think a 3D Mario is great to have on your console day one, or something like launch window, such as the case with Super Mario Odyssey. But we're talking about day one titles, baby, and is there a reason why a 3D Mario wouldn't make for a good launch title? I don't know, maybe there could be a case of putting your best foot forward too soon. Maybe you don't want to launch with a game like that just yet. Let the Switch 2 momentum build over the course of the launch year, and then when people are really at their peak of excitement, bam, hit them with a new 3D Mario game for the holiday season, or if it comes out early next year, which I'm thinking it is, hit them with that 3D Mario game, and you're just gonna rake in the cash, baby. Now, if we're talking about day one launch titles, there's actually a franchise that has a history of releasing alongside new Nintendo consoles, and that is Pilotwings. The first game released as a launch title for the Super NES in North America. Then there was Pilotwings 64 releasing as a launch title for the Nintendo 64, and then Pilotwings Resort launching with the Nintendo 3DS. These games are the definition of launch day games, specifically meant to show the graphical capabilities of the consoles they launched on. The first Pilotwings showed off what the Super FX chip inside the Super NES could do, and then Pilotwings 64 showed off the 3D capabilities of the Nintendo 64, which once again, like Mario 64, was a revolution for its time. And then Pilotwings Resort was a demonstration for the 3D effect of the Nintendo 3DS. And it was a good demonstration. I actually played this at a Target demo kiosk. I never got the game for myself, but it was really cool. So yeah, it's been 13 years since the last Pilotwings game, and maybe we could see it return on the Switch too, with some beautiful visuals. We're talking something like Microsoft Flight Simulator on the Xbox Series X and PC. Maybe not so much to that extent, but as much as the Switch 2 is capable of. The problem with Pilotwings games is that they're kind of light on content, because once again, they're meant to show off the graphical capabilities of the consoles they launched on. So if the same thing were to happen with a theoretical new Pilotwings game on Switch 2, maybe I wouldn't consider that a killer app, unless there's more features in there than just simply flying around an island through rings or something. I think if Nintendo really wants to make a splash with the Switch 2 right out of the gate though, you gotta think they're planning Mario Kart 9 to be a launch title. I mean, how could they not be at least considering it? Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is the best-selling game on the Nintendo Switch, bar none. So why not entice current Switch owners by releasing the next Mario Kart game on Switch 2? And better yet, with 4-player split screen at 60 FPS. It doesn't even have to be 4K. Just make it 60 FPS for the love of God, Nintendo. And look, I'm no marketing, business expert, or what have you, but you'd think that this would be a guaranteed moneymaker, right? Sure, but maybe Nintendo wants to play the long game with Mario Kart 9 just a little bit longer. It goes back to the 3D Mario point I was making. Maybe don't put your best foot forward on day one. Let the initial hardcore Nintendo fans who are gonna buy the system launch day anyway come in, and then once you need a little bit of a sales boost, bam, Mario Kart 9. We already know how huge this franchise is, how huge the last game was, so whenever it comes out, it's already going to be a guaranteed moneymaker. It wouldn't surprise me if this was the best-selling Switch 2 game as well. That's just how big Mario Kart is. But what about Nintendo's other popular franchise, Zelda? Well, they're already at a disadvantage here, because Tears of the Kingdom came out a year ago already. They're nowhere near ready for the next mainline Zelda game, but they do have a knack of putting out Zelda releases almost every year. So maybe this could be ripe time for a Zelda remake or re-release of some kind. How about instead of Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD, we get Wind Waker 4K and Twilight Princess 4K. Heck, bundle them together and Zelda fans will line up in droves to finally pick these games up. They're already guaranteed hits, they're beloved in the community, so why not treat Zelda fans on launch day of Switch 2? Well, I can think of a number of reasons. For one, these games are not brand new, so they're already immediately less enticing than something like a brand new Zelda game. But I think the bigger reason is that these games are quite different from Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. So Zelda fans who got into the franchise because of those games might jump into Wind Waker or Twilight Princess and think, this is nothing like what I wanted from Zelda, and they'll be less inclined to pick up those games, and by extension, a Switch 2 come launch day. Now, there could be other Zelda games to remake, re-release, what have you. There's been rumors that the Oracle games are being remastered in the same way Link's Awakening was. Ocarina of Time just had its 25th anniversary. Maybe there's a remake coming out for that soon, but I think the bottom line is if you're going to have a Zelda game on launch day, it's gotta be something brand new, and I think Nintendo has just missed the mark on this one because they're too busy working on the next mainline Zelda game. Which is fine, you know, take your time. Just like how you can take your time subscribing to GameXplain and hitting that notification bell to stay updated on all things Nintendo. Seriously, I won't rush you, although it is right there, so yeah. But you know what's been bugging me for a few years now? The rumors that Nintendo's Super Mario Odyssey team was working on a new Donkey Kong game. Those rumors came about around 2021, I believe, and it's been 3 years now, and we have since heard nothing about this. Maybe it was never real, maybe it was canned, but I gotta feel like if there's a time for a new Donkey Kong game, that would be now. I mean, there are Donkey Kong lands coming to multiple Universal Studios parks. The character had a big presence in the Mario movie. People have Mario fever, but they also have Donkey Kong fever, you know? So give the people what they want and give us a Donkey Kong experience on a new console like the Switch 2. I know the main rumor was that it was going to be a 2D Donkey Kong game, but there's also been a 3D rumor thrown in there somewhere. But I do feel like if there's going to be a DK game on the Switch 2's launch day, it's gotta be 3D to entice those young people who love 3D games to pick up a new console, and a Donkey Kong game to go with it. Now, there is an argument that could be made as to why Donkey Kong wouldn't be a good launch title, because he's not the main star of the Mario universe. That would be Mario. So if you're gonna come out with a game in the Mario universe, just make it Mario. And I've already mentioned the 3D Mario game, Mario Kart 9, but you know, it's time for his friends to get a little bit of love. So throw Donkey Kong in there, give him his own game. He deserves it. Let's be honest, guys. The first Mario game was Donkey Kong in 1981. Put some respect on the Kong, baby. When I was coming up with this list, I asked my wife, Crystal, what she would want to play on a new Nintendo console day one, and she told me Nintendogs. And cats, maybe. I personally have never played a Nintendogs or Cats game, but I know this game has its audience, and these were big deals when they came out on the DS and 3DS. So I don't know, a new Nintendogs game launching on the Switch 2 could maybe get a positive reaction from the people who've loved this game when they were children and can now afford to buy new consoles. Just having your own virtual pet that looks more real than any of the pets that were on the DS and 3DS, taking them with you portably wherever you go. It seems like a great way to get kids enticed into buying this, along with those nostalgic millennials, but would I consider it a killer app? Probably not. I feel like it could still make waves, but these games are not very in-depth. They're extremely simple games where you just take care of a virtual pet. It's not killer app material, if you catch my meaning. But hey, I would never be opposed to a new Nintendogs and Cats game. Maybe I'll finally give this franchise a shot once it returns. Hopefully it'll return. They're still in Smash Bros, I think, as assist trophies, so screw it. Put it on the Switch 2 launch lineup. Just do it, Nintendo. But if Nintendo wants to put out something that's more of a guaranteed moneymaker that isn't a Mario game, you gotta think Animal Crossing is being considered for a launch title, right? It's been 4 years since the last Animal Crossing game. It may even be 5 by the time the Switch 2 comes out. I don't know how long it takes to make life sim games like this, but maybe if the next game is almost ready, make it a Switch 2 launch title. I mean, those games are filled to the brim with content that you could play for literal years. And let's not forget the fact that Animal Crossing New Horizons made waves when it came out in the world. It became a top 10 best-selling Switch game in just under a year, which is insane if you think about it. So much so that it makes me wonder why Nintendo stopped supporting this game as soon as they did. I think we're all bewildered by that, but they have a chance here to make it up to us. Give us a new Animal Crossing game, one that's a bit more traditional, doesn't really have an island setting. Take it back to the towns. I've heard rumors that maybe big cityscapes are going to play a part in the next one. These games don't look that graphically intensive, so they may not demonstrate the power of the Switch 2, but do you really need to? Because it's Animal Crossing, people already love it, and they will line up in droves to get a Switch 2 if you put a new one on it day one. But in a sense, you might think maybe that is a problem. Maybe Nintendo doesn't want them selling out so fast to where nobody's able to get their hands on it. Who am I kidding? They're making money anyway. I don't even know why I brought that up. So in that sense, I think Animal Crossing on Switch 2 is something Nintendo is probably considering because they just know it'll make them boatloads of cash and or bells because Animal Crossing currency. Now, something I'm looking forward to seeing on Switch 2 whenever it comes out. It could be a launch title, it couldn't be, but I feel like the timing is ripe for a new Luigi's Mansion game. I was incredibly shocked by Luigi's Mansion 3. I did not think it was going to be that great of a game. I knew it was going to be good, but not that good, dude. It is one of the best Switch games of all time, in my opinion, and it also looked beautiful. The animations were so good, Mario movie level animations, honestly. Now imagine an even better looking Luigi's Mansion 4, dude, on the Switch 2 with 4K, maybe 60 FPS? Oh man, you already have a case for one of the best looking Switch 2 games, potentially. And you know, the timing is interesting because Luigi's Mansion, the first game, got a remaster on the Nintendo 3DS just a year before Luigi's Mansion 3 launched on the Switch, and now we're getting Luigi's Mansion 2 HD on the current Switch, so I don't know if I'm putting on a conspiracy cap or something, but maybe that's a sign we're getting a new Luigi's Mansion game soon? I don't know. But there is one major argument against it, and that is Nintendo does not want to repeat the mistakes of the Nintendo GameCube. What do I mean by that? Well, Luigi's Mansion was a launch title for the GameCube, and it was a pretty good one. Albeit for me, it did lack in some spots. It was a really short game, but yeah, it was more so a technical demonstration of the GameCube and its capabilities. But in the end, GameCube only sold roughly 20 million units. I forget the exact number off the top of my head, but yeah, not a major hit for Nintendo. And maybe Nintendo wants to make the Switch 2 least like the GameCube as possible, so they wouldn't launch Luigi's Mansion 4 on it. Maybe I'm thinking too hard about it, but yeah, it totally seems like a Nintendo kind of strategy. And the final game that I think could serve as a great killer app for the Nintendo Switch 2 is, I don't know, something new. That's the thing, something brand new that we're not expecting from Nintendo. A brand new IP that has a chance of getting a new audience. It's happened before. Need we forget, Nintendo already launched a console with a brand new IP in the form of Wii Sports. Granted, it was a pack-in game, but still, everyone knows what Wii Sports is now. Everyone still has fond memories of that game from 20 years ago at this point. God, has it been that long? It's been 18 years, but still, we're getting to the 2-decade mark of the Wii, and it just doesn't make me feel good. But it just goes to show how it's still possible for Nintendo to come out with new ideas that still make waves. Heck, let's talk about Splatoon. That is a relatively new franchise for Nintendo. Came out 9 years ago on the Wii U. Of course, it was sort of held back by the limited number of people that owned a Wii U, but then it continued to make splashes on the Switch with Splatoon 2 and Splatoon 3. That franchise is just absolutely huge, and it is relatively young by Nintendo standards. Heck, there was also ARMS in the first year of the Switch, which was a moderate success. It wasn't anything too huge when compared to Nintendo's other big franchises, but I know it has its audience and it still sold millions of copies. So yeah, if Nintendo wants to surprise us with something new on the Switch 2's launch day, do it, man. We love new ideas here in the gaming scene. I know the big IP are the ones that make the most money, but it is refreshing seeing new ideas, especially from companies as large as Nintendo.